while the downtown east side definitely does have a highly visible, concentrated example of mental health and the opioid crisis, while we're talking about this, I think it's important not to frame this as a problem that's unique to the downtown east side, or to not assume that the rest of the country is unaware or not being faced with this.
You've probably heard of Vancouver's downtown east side, and not for reasons that make you want to rush on over and visit. It's one of the city's oldest neighborhoods, and there was a time when it was Vancouver's retail and cultural center. There's even a Carnegie Library at the edge. But neighborhoods evolve, and now the area has become synonymous with substance use, homelessness, and the tragedy of a seemingly intractable mental health crisis that is affecting dozens, if not hundreds, of communities of all sizes and shape across Canada. So we're doing a series of episodes on CityTalk, looking at this issue from different perspectives and focusing in on what's working, what's not, and what needs to be next to find solutions. It's really hard to see anything that's working when you venture into the downtown east side in Vancouver. Large numbers of people congregating along streets and doorways who are clearly struggling with mental and physical health challenges, substance use and addictions, maybe sleeping rough or bouncing from shelter to shelter. But can we find examples of something that is working? Donna-Lynne Rosa is the CEO of Atira Women's Resource Society. Corey McCallum is Atira's Director of Outreach Programs. Atira is one of the largest providers of supportive housing to women in Vancouver, and it is located right in the downtown east side. They are at ground zero. And they're going to help us, discover what is working in the downtown east side. Donna-Lynne and Corey, welcome to CityTalk. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, Mary.
Nice to be here.
I'm going to set this up with some general conversation, general sort of topics, because as you know, we have listeners across Canada, and some may be familiar with the downtown east side, and some may really not be. And we have listeners in the United States who maybe know the Lower East Side in New York, but they don't know the downtown east side in Vancouver. So it's been a well-known face of the opioid crisis for a long time. You guys can tell me for just how long. But people across the country may not understand the intensity of the crisis or the history of it. So can you lay out for us just how severe this has become? I'm going to start with you, Donna-Lynne, please.
Sure, thanks. Corey's, interestingly, he and his team are on the ground in the downtown east side. I'm joining from that area, from our offices. This is a community, as you said, Mary, that is one of the oldest communities in this area. And while it's been a tourist attraction, the community that has been built up around people with, a confluence of needs, addictions, mental health. But really what brings this community together is their ability to support each other and the services that are provided for each other in this community. It is a community where I can tell you, when I started working here, I would walk down the street and yes, I would feel uncomfortable, but I've never felt unsafe. And it's a community that embraces you when they get to know you, when they get to see you, when they get to trust you. And we're actually all here supporting each other, lifting each other up and walking alongside each other so that we're not dictating what people need in life. We're here to support and provide services where we can. And mainly for Atira, it's women's resources. So it's women, children, gender diverse folks who are fleeing violence.
Mm-hmm. Corey, just it would be helpful probably for us to have a bit of a sense of your own personal histories with the space. So Donna-Lynne, I'll come back to you in a second so you can bring us up to speed on that too. But Corey, tell us how long you've been working in the area.
Thank you. I've been working for Atira and in the area for 15 years now. Wow. I spent a pretty significant amount of time working in SROs, which is single room occupancy buildings, supportive housing. And, really started from the ground up with Atira. Have seen different looks of the downtown east side in terms of pre-fentanyl to where we are today with the opioid and toxic drug crisis. And, although the downtown east side in my duration of working down here has always has always been a marginalized neighborhood. We definitely have seen an increase in fatal overdoses, folks with more glaring mental health and addiction-related issues that are front-facing in the street, that are not getting support and services that they need on the spot.
How many blocks is the downtown east side?
The most concentrated would be like 6 to 8 city blocks. And as we kind of go and onto this topic, I do think it's important to, while the downtown east side definitely does have a highly visible, concentrated example of mental health and the opioid crisis, while we're talking about this, I think it's important not to frame this as a problem that's unique to the downtown east side, or to not assume that the rest of the country is unaware or not being faced with this. The opioid and mental health crisis is unfolding across urban and suburban rural communities nationwide, which are often less visible but equally devastating in many ways.
Yeah, I mean, that's why I wanted to talk with you folks, because I feel that we have these challenges at different levels of intensity and scale in communities across the country. Big cities, small cities, small communities, rural communities. I mean, no one is immune from all this. But just let me say, as a non-Vancouverite who comes to Vancouver twice a year, let's say, I always walk the downtown east side. The last time I was there, I saw you. I came and looked at one of the Atira properties. But I've got to say, it was the most disheartening walk I've had in a long time. I wasn't afraid for myself, but I did find myself feeling overwhelmed by the intensity of challenge and struggle that people were obviously having in public space, on city streets. It's a struggle to try to understand what the hell has gone wrong here, that this is so concentrated and so visibly a failing system. So that's just my Eastern Canada bias coming in.
I think, Mary, if I could speak to that, I think some of the shock that some people feel when visiting the downtown east side can reveal more about, not claiming that this is your stance per se, but it reveals more about society's distance and sometimes apathy towards people living in extreme marginalization, rather than the true scope of the crisis. Reducing the issues to what is visible in the downtown east side risks oversimplification, reinforcing stigma, and missing the broader and systemic failures that fuel this, which is a nationwide emergency at this point.
No, listen, I'm agreeing with you that it's very clearly a systemic failure.
Yeah.
Very clearly. You're not gonna blame anybody individually for what you're seeing there. But for someone who is invested in how we make cities a better place, let me go to you, Donna-Lynne. I mean, Atira has zeroed in on a particular set of services and supports that obviously you have experience to suggest are making it better for people. There's obviously a confluence of many issues, including mental health challenges, substance use, drug abuse, drug addiction, homelessness going on here. When you look at your particular work in that community, how do you prioritize? Which do you tackle first?
That's an excellent question. And I will say, Mary, first of all, there's a little bit of sensationalization going on across the country around the downtown east side. I should say that. So when people come in, they're expecting the worst.
Yeah.
And really, we should say, I mean, some of it is for various fodder and political ploys and all those things. The fact of the matter is, we know people need housing and we know people need services. So we're here to develop housing and to provide housing, whether it's single room occupancy, whether it's shelter, whether it's supportive housing, whether it's moving into more permanent housing. Our goal is to walk with folks along their journey to find them the right housing. But you cannot have housing and be successful in community if you don't have services. And so the services that are here in the downtown east side help people to get through their day and move to whatever their hope is. you said something about this being, and Corey's mentioned that this isn't just a Vancouver downtown Eastside issue. This is across the province. It's across the country. One of the challenges we have is that other municipalities haven't necessarily kept pace, and they haven't been offering the services. This is a grossly underfunded sector, and it's not just in terms of the housing. It's in terms of the mental health supports and the other wraparound services that are needed. And I will say, I'll just add to that, we know that Atira went from a 5-room house in Surrey where we supported women fleeing violence because we knew that there was nobody supporting women alone. And we've grown to at our highest, we were over 3,000 units. And we're not even coming close to meeting the need.
Let's talk for a minute about those things, because I'm hearing you about this point about underfunding. I mean, we have this all the time at CUI, that municipal governments are challenged by situations that actually are not all of their doing. That there are multiple jurisdictions that are responsible for aspects of our life together. And if the federal and provincial governments aren't as engaged and aren't as committed financially, then all of it just flows downstream, and suddenly it's in your hands with the municipal government that you have to deal with all that. I mean, we saw that during COVID, and that's when I first got to know you, Donna-Lynne. You were working as the director of the Parks Department, or what was your title? You were what?
General Manager of the Park Board.
But you were faced with encampments, and the same point that Corey's making around these manifestations of mental health, we saw the same with encampments. There were encampments that were, and we still have them, they're across the country. They're in communities of every size, but you had a couple of extraordinary ones. And you were both, I think, Corey, you worked on the relocation of people out of encampments too. Am I right?
That's correct.
But to me, that was a really important illustration that, just for the benefit of our listeners, encampments are naturally occurring places where people choose to pitch a tent or sleep rough, and they can get quite large. So in the case of the one in Oppenheimer Park, I think, is that the one that was the biggest?
Well, Oppenheimer was big. Strathcona was bigger. It hit about 500 tents at its largest, and then Crab Park came after that. It was basically the same folks, changing from each one. But essentially what happened at Strathcona was, because COVID hit and because there was some debate about whether people would be safer inside, safer outside, there was a lot of back and forth. And for the first time ever, the province, the municipality, and the elected park board, the 3 levels of government, came together, signed a memorandum of understanding, and agreed to who was responsible for what. And so that forced the staff, once the political folks signed this MOU, the staff came together and then had to deliver. And the number 1 priority was to keep people alive. The number 2 priority right up there was to do this with dignity and move people into spaces that were appropriate. Now, what happened was we had to move people into spaces, in the city and the province worked together to get things like old hotels, and move people quickly. And it wasn't the regular process that you would use to triage to make sure that people were in the right spots that fit the needs, the mobility needs, the wraparound service needs, and even the community needs. You know, not everybody should be in one community or another. And this is what we do with the province to make sure that people are properly fit into their spaces. But what Corey's team was doing was going into the park, whether it was handing out water and saying, hello, hey, somebody cares about you today, or it was, hey, let's pack your stuff. We got you a new place and you have a key tonight to lock your door. That's what his team was doing.
And it really is person by person by person, right, Corey? It's got to be, I mean, this is what I've learned walking into communities with folks like you. I just learned that you know everybody's name. You've got a sense of what everyone's circumstance is.
Well, our time at Strathcona Park, we spent a significant amount of time in that encampment. We were there, our teams were there every day, 24/7 for about almost 5 months. And yeah, we did get that opportunity to get to know all of the individuals there, individual needs, we got a really great opportunity to see see the side of the encampment that probably wasn't seen by a lot of folks who would be outside of a community like that. That it really was a community. It had its own leadership. It had its own
Mm-hmm.
hierarchies that, for better and for worse, worked for that community. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and the community at that time, we had the benefit of after some time of relationship building, really embracing us as part of it. Um, and so, yeah, it is very much case by case, meeting people where they're at, and delivering services to the best of your ability that are individually based on the individual needs of a person.
Mary, can I just add to that that while the government was getting their stuff together with the MOU, the critical part of the success of treating people with dignity and moving people indoors from Strathcona Park was the partnership with the not-for-profits, and in this case, Atira, the partnership with the folks who are actually in there. Government can write all the MOUs and all the policies and all this stuff they want to do, but without people building relationships like we do at Atira and like the other not-for-profits do, none of this is going to work because there's no trust. And that's where Corey and the Atira team came in and built that trust in order to make anything work.
So let's talk about the funding piece, because the suggestion, I think, was that, people may think, oh, this is isolated. Oh, well, that's Vancouver. That's the downtown east side. But in fact, we won't have a listener, I'm sure, that won't be able to identify an area that they know in their city where someone is sleeping rough, or some kind of an experience or proximity they've had to someone who obviously has a mental health challenge and maybe may be in and out of a shelter system or something like that. So how do you think is it alignment that would bring the resources to bear? What do you think? What do we need to do to get that funding challenge addressed?
Number one, let's get the egos out of the room. And let's get the, hey, elect me next out of the room. If we can get that mentality set aside and actually center the human being, center the fact that this one person deserves dignity. This one person deserves a shot. And I do not have the right to tell that one person what their definition of living is within the scope of, the law and stuff. But ultimately, we have not centered the people in this. We have centered government. We have centered policy. We have centered, politics way too much. And it's all ego-driven. And if we can drop the egos, we can get the right people to the table. Corey, I'm sure you have even more insight on that.
Well, I mean, something that I hear a lot, and we hear it kind of on the news, and it'll be like, what are we going to do to fix this? Like, how are we going to fix this problem that we see? And I think that's a mistake. Not everybody's idea of being successful or having a successful outcome might not look the same. So when we go down the downtown east side or East Hastings and the 3 or 200 block, and we're like, oh my goodness, like this is out of control. But what it actually is you're seeing a group of people that are probably connected to services, probably have health teams that are following them, probably have access to housing and advocates and resources and food, and we're ensuring that people are going to stay alive long enough or hopefully live a full life, or live long enough to be able to access services that will be pivotal in their own life experience, and make a choice if they want to.
But Corey, if you take what you're experiencing in a concentrated area in the downtown east side, and you come into Montreal, or you come into Toronto or London or Peterborough or Edmonton, what I observe when I'm in those cities is I don't see the same level of intensity and concentration going 4 or 5 blocks. But what I might see is a clustering of 5, 6, 10, 15 people in a certain gathered area. And what we will hear from people is that it means that the businesses can't function on that street. And as we can see, governments are responding in I think a way that you would probably suggest is inappropriate. They are reflexively responding because school kids are passing by, and the parents don't feel comfortable that the kids have to be exposed to open drug use. So I think this is a challenge in urban life generally. How do you actually make room for multiple uses, different kinds of users, different kinds of dwellers, and how do we have a kind of set of accepted norms that make it feel okay? So what would you say back to that neighborhood, Corey, that is saying, wait a second, I can't get my kids into school, or I can't go and use that corner store because I have to go through a gathering of folks whose focus is not on, buying a quart of milk at the store.
Yeah, and it is a very good question that I don't necessarily have the answer for you. I think that where, for example, for a neighborhood like the downtown Eastside, I'll use an example like Oppenheimer Park, which is across the street from our office.
Yep. Yep.
The city of Vancouver has partnered with our group to have us staff the washrooms there, which is visited by a wide array of people. There's a children's park right behind it. And so with that partnership, we have 3 staff on, and we also have 15 to 20 peer workers from the community who oversee the safety of that washroom and ensure it's, that folks are able to access that space safely. And I think it's creative thinking like that, reaching out to the communities to find solutions around issues like the one that you raised. Because when we're looking to the community, they will have the words, the body language, the know-how of how to approach individuals to communicate to them like, hey, let's maybe clear this space out so that, these families can get by. And I totally hear you that it's a complex situation, but I do think with creative thinking and collaboration between government and nonprofit service providers, you can come up with creative solutions for those complex situations.
And if I could add too, let's be crystal clear that the majority of folks in supportive housing present no threat to the community, to the staff, to anybody. Like the majority. There are a few, just like any community. And it really is, most of the incidents that we find are happening where there's chronic underfunding, where there's aging out facilities, when people don't have a place to be inside that's temperature controlled, so they have to go outside, they're congregating. The downtown East Side, per capita, has the lowest amount of access to green space. You have Oppenheimer Park and you have Crab Park, basically. And then one of the parks we have is all concrete down here, Pigeon Park. So without access to green space, you're now pushing people into a location, and they end up on the street where they gather as community. But again, part of that is the chronic underfunding, where we're putting people in old buildings, and there is no air conditioning in these buildings. There is no, place for people to ventilate in these buildings.
I mean, this, as you say, underserviced buildings, and no place to go. And here's another little piece of the puzzle, which I'm interested what your views would be. The downtown East Side, like key areas in other cities, also is where there's a concentration of services and supports for people that are experiencing some of the challenges that folks experience in that circumstance. And there are folks that will say, well, why don't we distribute those services more broadly? Why are they concentrated in the downtowns? This is true of downtowns across the country. Should we be looking at distributing services across other neighborhoods? What's your perspective on that?
Ultimately, I don't think we disperse what's in this area. We still need this amount. We just need to add services elsewhere because there's services needed. People move to this space because of the services, but they're also staying home, and people should be allowed to stay home.
Right.
Sorry, I was a little passionate about that one.
Passionate's allowed. Passion is good. I mean, I know I guess that's the thing. It shouldn't be a zero-sum game. We shouldn't have to say, oh, well, let's make fewer services available. Of course not. But again, I feel with encampments, and I observed this through COVID, there's this wonderful term in urban planning called desire paths. A desire path is you design a park and you make beautiful areas to sit, and you have pathways, and the landscape architects and the designers come up with this beautiful design. And maybe they talk to people and say, oh, we might make it this, we might make it that. They build the darn thing. And for 6 months they watch, and they find out after 6 months that actually nobody uses that path. They all take the grass. They go on, and it's called a desire path. And I feel like encampments are a form of desire path. They are people telling us that this is the choice I'm making and where I want to be located. I want the attributes that an encampment can give me. And Corey, you just described it beautifully when you were talking about Strathcona. They self-organized. They had a sense of community. Donna-Lynne, you always remind me there's an elaborate network of mutual aid in the downtown East Side, that you want people who come in to suspend their judgment and be able to see what is organically forming here as people do help each other. And I think those are important takeaways, that these are fundamentally different forms of community. I guess what we're struggling with is, how do we address the underfunding issue? How do we address the fact that there should be better facilities? You just said one, more green space, more options for places to go, so that it doesn't then become this concentration of what some people would find overly bleak.
I'd like to add into that purpose-built housing as well. Housing that is built purposely to house complex folks. For example, a unit that has its own drain in it, so that if the sprinklers do go off, the 4 floors underneath it don't get flooded out. So just creative solutions to that. And you may see, you mentioned something that's actually really important is, these encampments, they offer a community that an SRO won't be able to, although there may be individuals that the folks there do connect with. Donna-Lynne mentioned they're hot, they're old, they're pest-ridden. They, have various, long-standing histories within Vancouver, as well. They come with rules that sometimes people do not want to. It's not even do not want to, but their lifestyle, their needs do not co-align with those rule systems. So they find themselves being evicted from one provider, then the next provider, then the next provider, and then they find themselves possibly living in an encampment where they're able to have that autonomy to live their lifestyle.
I'm wondering, as we sort of try to round this out, we know that we need additional funding, we need jurisdictional alignment, we need higher degrees of trust with organizations, and then I think we need some sense of hope that there's another alternative, another path. Tell me what gives you hope, Corey.
I've been in the field for a while now, and in my times of trying to seek hope or understanding, I kind of realized that addiction, mental health, poverty, marginalized populations have been here since before I was ever here, and will be here long after I am gone. And so with that, I found in a way, rather than trying to figure out how can we find an accepting space within ourselves to realize that this is a part of our community, this is a part of our society, and always has been and always will be. So finding that space within myself to open my heart to individuals who are heavily marginalized by our society and find a space for them where they do exist as they are here and now, versus trying to figure out how we can get rid of this or how we can fix them or how we can is to really hold space for individuals who are marginalized by our societies, whether it's through mental illness, addiction, poverty, trauma, or all of the above. Find a space where that does exist. And I think that as jarring as the downtown East Side can be for some people who don't spend time here, that's what this neighborhood is this is a space and a place that is carved out for people who are marginalized by our society. And so that is what kind of brings me hope, is just finding that space within myself where there is no cookie cutter answer. Let's see what we can do to get services to people who need them and have them on standby for people who don't need them yet but may want them in the future.
I often say that cities are fundamentally about empathy, that we throw ourselves in together. It's an Indigenous concept as well, Donna-Lynne, that we are interdependent on one another. And so the more that we remind ourselves that we are interdependent and that our proximity and our adjacency puts us into company with people that are not like us and have different circumstances than we have, but that we build our capacity to have empathy for one another, and somehow together we find a sort of a shared path. So with that note, thank you for joining us to talk about a very complex and also demanding, but also at many ways poignant and heartening when you talk about the strengths and assets of the downtown East Side and what the people are bringing there, the organizations, the people that live there, the people that work there, but also the people that find themselves there and have their sense of attachment and community. So thank you for joining us, Corey. Really pleased to meet with you. Thank you for taking the time. And Donna-Lynne, lovely to talk with you too in this new role that you're in, and for us to hear about the long-term efforts that Atira is making to provide these kinds of supportive communities right in the heart of the downtown East Side. So thank you for joining us.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you. It's a pleasure.